you're deploying the critical infrastructure, that's what you have to build your future on. And what this is about jobs, economic development. You're talking about making an investment for generations to come. And it's really important that you do it right the first time.
Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits Podcast, live edition. Sorry, it's an old joke with the show that they're all live editions, recorded, not really live. Gary Bolton is with us, the CEO and president of the Fiber Broadband Association. Welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
You've been doing, I think, really great work branding the Fiber Broadband Association, being out there talking about fiber broadband. Today we're going to talk about, what I think is like a more aggressive approach to it, which I'll just admit, I think is both correct and I'm still uncomfortable with it. But first of all...
That means I'm doing my job, right?
I think so. I really think you are doing a good job at your position, and I think it's needed out there. But for people who are old school and may not recognize you because maybe they haven't been tuning in, you're the Fiber to the Home Council, Americas, is now the Fiber Broadband Association. Can you just 30 seconds on why that name changed?
Sure. Well, Chris, just a little bit of background about the whole Fiber to the Home Council. Mm-hmm. So, we're the Fiber Broadband Association. I'm responsible for the Americas, so North America chapter, as well as we have a Latin America chapter. And then we also have the Fiber Optic Sensing Association, FOSA. But we're part of a global organization, and also has a European chapter, mm-hmm. Middle East, North Africa chapter, a South Africa chapter, as well as Asian chapter. So there's 6 chapters, and then again, one of our subsidies is the FOSA. And so what we're responsible for is making sure that advocating for the deployment of fiber across, the Americas or Latin America. And our members, what's nice about our membership is we're multi-stakeholder. Mm-hmm. So we are the full ecosystem for the fiber broadband industry. So about a little over half our members are service providers, and the other half are the supply side. So that's everything from engineering consultants to the financiers to the fiber manufacturers to the access equipment manufacturers to the deployment specialists and enclosures and all that stuff. So anything that has to do with fiber broadband, that's our membership, and that's what we're, who we represent.
And that includes some of the largest companies that have built fiber out to millions of homes, like AT&T and Verizon, as well as probably some of the smallest, or at least the smaller ones, that have elected to join and get both the benefits of your association, but also the way trade associations work. The more members you have, the more you can advocate for these sorts of things that a lot of fiber deployers should be supportive of.
Yeah, we're really lucky because, we're at kind of this historic moment with this big investment cycle that we're coming into in fiber. So if you look at our service providers, as you mentioned, they could be large like a Verizon, or they could be alternative like a Google Fiber, to Windstream, all the way down to municipalities, rural electric co-ops. And if you look kind of the nature of broadband deployment, what we saw, kind of in the early days, it was kind of the Verizon, AT&T. And so then what we saw is that as communities were being left behind, they started stepping up. And so we started seeing municipalities start stepping up. Like one of our chairmen is Katie Espeth from EPB, the Electric Power Board of Chattanooga. And so then, we started to see a need for helping communities be able to stand up broadband. So we, like at our conference, we have workshops on being able to go everything from community will to financing it to deployment and servicing and everything that has to do with fiber. So there's a lot of value for communities or rural electric co-ops to join. Just even like we had a branding workshop because a lot of these municipalities aren't great at bundling and branding and
yes.
selling consumer services, basically.
Right. Yes, and I should say that we are together at the Broadband Communities event in Houston, Texas, where I guess the next one will be next year. We'll have another one of these in early May in Houston for Broadband Communities. What shows do you have coming up where people might come to learn more about the fiber that I think of you as being both technical things and like what's happening in the technical end of fiber as well as business practices and marketing and things like that. What shows do you have coming up?
Our big one is our Fiber Connect conference in June in Nashville. So we were 40% above our record ever this past July, and we are looking to add another 500 attendee slots. We had to close early. I think we'll be sold out again early. So we need to get, if you're interested in coming, it'll be a great show. My next thing is the Calix Connection Summit in Las Vegas is in a couple weeks. But it seems like anything that has to do with fiber and broadband, or even workforce development. I do spend a lot of time with PCCA. That's basically the labor workforce power communications construction association. So that's a big part of it. As you mentioned, some of our committees, one of our most popular committees, our technology committee. And so our members really have a strong technical acumen. And so that really is the foundation for advocacy. So we really are very fact-based on our advocacy. Our public policy committee is very strong. We have great lobbyists. And hopefully Thursday we'll have a very positive vote.
Yes. When people hear this, unfortunately, they'll know which way it went, although it might be delayed 8 times before then. So we don't know. But I know that you've been doing great work along with other advocates to make sure that money is spent in a way that will benefit future generations and not require having to subsidize the same households over and over again to get proper infrastructure to them. And I'm really on board with that. You have a button, you have a slogan. If it's not fiber, it's not broadband. We're going to come to that in 1 second.
Sure.
But one other thing I want to ask you about that I think is really exciting. You're doing a kind of a workforce training approach. Tell us about that quick.
Usually our investment in our industries, federal subsidies, has been about $4 billion a year. And with this infrastructure and RDOF and everything coming down, we're looking at about 4 times that here in the coming years. So with all that CapEx investment, we really don't have the workforce. Right now, our workforce can grow at about 15% a year. And so what we did at the Fiber Broadband Association is, given our expertise, is we put together a fiber optic technician training program, unlike anything that's available. So there's lots of fiber optic training, but that's a lot of breadth and no depth. And so what we did is went very narrow and very deep to have 144 hours of classroom and laboratory training with 2,000 hours apprenticeship, and it's fully accredited by the Department of Labor. And so we're rolling that out. We're getting ready to do our pilot here at the end of the year. And then we'll be training up trainers to roll out to community colleges and institutions across the nation.
For those of us who are new to this, recognize the need. Just what does that mean? So is this like it's coming to a community college near you kind of thing?
Well, if you think about, so the way the broadband infrastructure bill is going to be rolled out, it'll be administered by NTIA, but all the money will be pushed down to the states. And so then every state will, whether they have a broadband office or something like that, they'll have to put something up to be able to distribute this money. And so as they're distributing the money, the communities and the operators that are going to take the money need feet on the street that can deploy the fiber. And so we'll be working with those broadband offices and the workforce development to make sure that those community colleges and training institutions and even operators that have their own training, that we can be able to get those trainers trained. For example, we met with, you and I were up in Keystone, up in the Summit County. And so I had some follow-up meetings with the state of Colorado. And so they have a great workforce development office. And so we met with the Front Range community colleges. Now, in Boulder, they're all set up. They have expertise in fiber optics, they have labs and all that. But the other campuses don't. And so what we need is for that state to be able to take that, the equipped Boulder outfit and be able to bring the other community colleges up to speed. And so really we've got to be able to be scalable with this. And so we're looking for help from the states. We'll provide the expertise. We need to help, have them figure out how to scale it up to their state.
Okay. It's wonderful. And I want to track that as it goes because I'm very interested in this. We're doing a little bit of work in Indian country to try to help build indigenous workforces to own their own networks and develop those sorts of skills. And there's a lot I can maybe try and steal from you. Well,
actually, and the exciting part about this, we're not just providing a job, but we're doing training for a career. So if you come out of the military or if you're coming out of high school and you're looking for a career, you need fiber optic technicians in every community across the country. So it's not like you have to go some crazy place across the country to get this career. You'll be able to get this training in your community and be able to, have this career in your community.
Yes.
Or anywhere you want to go. So it's pretty exciting.
So let's talk about if it's not fiber, it's not broadband. Where does that come from?
So my good friend Bob Knight and Kim McKinley they chair one of our committees called the Public Officials Roundtable.
And I can't say anything bad about them because they're peeking through the curtains behind us.
There's Bob. Oh, Kim's here too?
Fresh back from the beach, where she worked very hard.
All right, so now I got to change what I say about. No, but so one of the the first meetings we had, we were talking. The public officials were talking about when they go to their city council and they say, "Hey, we need to fiber," and they're like, "Well, why should we do fiber? Because we're going to have 5G." And it just being when they hear things like 25/3 or 100 by 100, none of these things mean anything to them.
Because in the back of their mind, they're thinking the next election, there's going to be glossy mailers saying, council member so-and-so voted to spend $20 million of your hard-earned money on this thing that was totally not needed, the monorail from The Simpsons. That's what they're afraid of.
The issue is that it's so complex. This is how you get confused. And so when they hear things, they don't know what to believe. Mm-hmm. And so just to simplify it, it just dawned on me that we should just say, if it's not fiber, it's not broadband, because at the end of the day, it's not about how much speed. I mean, we're shipping 10 gig symmetric PON today. So 10 gig services when people are talking about 25/3. Mm-hmm. We're going to be shipping 25 gig PON and 50 gig PON. And so the speeds keep going up. But there's other things to worry about, like latency and security and reliability. And so fiber is the gold standard in every on every dimension. The other part of this is when you deploy, you're deploying the critical infrastructure. That's what you have to build your future on. And what this is about jobs, economic development. It's really about being able to have that remote healthcare, online education, and that platform for future services like 5G. So if you don't build the foundation right, you're talking about making an investment for generations to come. And it's really important that you do it right the first time.
Well, let me ask you some challenging questions then.
Sure, go ahead.
And I'll say that anyone who's followed my work knows that I'm a strong fiber advocate. But I do also see important roles for wireless. I'm working, with tribes to try to encourage the use of 2.5 gigahertz. I frankly think wireless could do a lot if we really reformed how we allocate spectrum and things like that. So, I'll be totally honest that I'm not going to be as, if Claude Aiken was here grilling you, he'd be asking you perhaps different, more pointed questions, but I'm going to do the best I can.
Claude would say, I need more fiber to get to my fixed wireless.
Well, Claude actually, absolutely would say that. And I think he also does a very good job of navigating a challenge and that his members need both fiber and wireless, in order to
he also
separate.
Sent a letter to every governor across every state saying, ignore all those treasury rules on not deploying fixed wireless.
I mean, I've also encouraged people to read the Treasury rules in certain ways. So, but let's talk about one of the most common claims, which I think probably is, there might be a tie. We'll come to the second one in a minute. But the first one is, it'd be nice to have fiber everywhere, but we just can't afford that. The cost would be far too much. And usually no one wants to knock down. They might say it might cost $300 billion. I don't think it necessarily would, but the sense is that we can't do it because it's too costly. It's impractical.
If you go 85 years ago, when you're putting out the Rural Electrification Act and getting power to every person across America, if you got power to a house, why can't you get fiber?
Because labor was cheaper then.
Oh, is it about labor? I don't think the cost is labor, right?
Well, no. I mean, this is something. I mean, so there's two things I would say to come back to you. I think you're making a very good point. We've had 85 years.
No, but think about it.
We have the poles now, so
but
it should
think
be
about if your home wasn't served by electricity because say, oh, Chris, you're too expensive. Why? I can serve it to your neighbor super cheap, but man, you're down a long road, and so you can get a generator or something.
Right.
I mean,
that was
when was the last time that you worried about how much electricity you had to your house?
Right.
You don't sit there. Right. No one sits there and tells you. You don't worry about it, right? You turn on, all your lights work, everything.
Right, and that's where I feel like it's a really good argument to get the job done right. I also do think. This is where you sort of hear the libertarian in me starting to creep up a little bit, which is. It is harder now to permit and to go through a lot of these processes. And I think the cost of labor is higher than it was then when farmers might have taken a day off in the off season to put their own poles in and things like that. And maybe we should be, I think, frankly, you probably know of instances in which people have done that. I just came from we were just talking about the People's Telephone Cooperative in Kentucky where they famously used Bub, the mule. But anyway, I mean, that is something that people will point out, is that it is more expensive now. And on top of that, electricity had a monopoly. And so it was easier to spread those costs up around because you had that monopoly. And we can't give anyone a broadband monopoly today.
So what the administration, President Biden's doing is providing $65 billion, right? And this is on top of, like states like California that have $6 billion for broadband. And you're looking at, we have $20.4 billion for RDOF. We have the Reconnect program. So there is lots of subsidies, state and federal, as well as private investment. So there's plenty of capital to do this. And it really comes down to digital equity. And so when you go and say, Chris, we're going to treat you differently because of where you live. I mean, I'll give you an example and this isn't just rural, this is urban. I teach at the university in the evenings. As a matter of fact, gave an exam last night. And so I had my students do a study. I do big data analytics in the spring. So this past spring we did a study in the city and tried to figure out why certain zip codes were left behind. We say we're in a real prosperous city, but there's certain zip codes that are just left behind. And so they looked at all the census data, did triple regression analysis, and three things bubbled up. First is are they spending more than 30% of their income on rent, right? So they're basically living hand to mouth. Second is, do they have access to broadband and the internet, right? And I can't remember what the third area was, but basically...
That's okay, Governor.
The net of all this is that if you don't provide broadband, you're relegating to a certain segment of the community to generational poverty. Right. And so that's all about digital equity. And so if you're able, because what happens is the retail moves away from those low income areas, right? And they move to the high income areas. So now those entry level jobs where those low income area people can get to, well, they're very far away now, right? And so when you're trying to take 2 or 3 jobs to be able to pay your rent that you can barely afford to, then it just puts you in this, death spiral that you're never going to get out of. And so it's really critical that you're able to, for online education, for even getting, the COVID relief, the money there. How did you get it? You had to go online to be able. So I thought that was pretty interesting that it's basically a race online. And so who's able to get PPP and everything? It's those that have access to, really fast broadband and computers. Right.
And that's where I come down to, because I do not think it's a good argument that we don't have enough money, because that is a code word for anyone who understands government, that it's not a priority. And what that means is that it's not a priority that some people who I think in many ways have already been disempowered, like rural regions should have a lot of political power in our system. And in some ways they do, but it's often not exercised in their benefit. And I think a decision that says, well, we can only afford to make sure that 90% of the population has good broadband is writing off 10%. And I don't think that's appropriate. But one of the things that I'll hear, and let me know if you've heard this before, is people will say, well, it's mostly second homes out there. We shouldn't be putting money into fiber so that someone's second or third home that they're going to stay at for 1 or 2 months a year gets fiber.
You see that, right? That comes out saying, oh, here they got some federal subsidies and that, you subsidize broadband to rich houses on the lake. Well, yeah, I mean, so I have a lake house. It's in the poorest county in North Carolina. But yeah, the houses along the lake, they're not so poor. But at the end of the day, being able to have the people that serve that community, so when you go out to restaurants, all the goods and services that are from that community, if those people in the community don't have broadband, they're going to be stuck in that same situation. And so you can't just say carve out. And again, that's all this propensity to spend model, right? The broadband providers are happy to deploy where there's a propensity to spend, right? And so that's the zip codes or the areas or the region of the lake, but this is what's great about the administration is they're looking to get this money down to providers that are going to serve every member of the community, right? Not just those with the highest level of income.
So I think the second argument is time to market. Sure, it'd be nice to have broadband out to everyone, but it's going to take 4 or 5 years to build out to some of these areas. The electric co-ops, they're building as fast as they can in many cases, but it's very challenging on tight margins, so they can't just do it all in 1 year. So it's going to take too long, and wireless is faster is the supposition.
Well, so first of all devices are wireless, right? I mean, we live in a wireless world. When I get on my computer at home, it's hooked to Wi-Fi. or you might have something hooked to Bluetooth, 5G, your phone. I mean, so we are totally untethered. So wireless is fantastic for mobility. But the first rule of wireless is get it out of the air and into the ground at the first available spot. And so if you look at kind of where we're going for the services of the future, is that they have to be very low latency. If you want to have autonomous vehicles, if you want to have virtual reality applications, you have to have ultra low latency. And
just
you're not
you just have your Amazon device that responds to the A word. Just you want to have a conversation with it. Those require very low latencies.
So you have latency, security, all those things. And that's where, if Claude or any of the wireless guys were here, they would say, yeah, I need fiber as close to a subscriber as possible. And that's where what you want to be able to do is you want to get fiber super deep and then provide, some untethering. But, who knew that, my Peloton was going to suck all my bandwidth in my house, right? Or my Ring doorbell, so the applications,
the security system.
Well, today, we talked about precision farming and, swarms of drones needing, 2 gig symmetric. So these applications are going to drive the need not only for massive amounts of broadband or bandwidth, but also with very, very low latency. And then you got to think about security. You got to think about reliability, durability. So all that means fiber. And so, yes, you want things untethered, but you need to get fiber as close to the endpoint as possible.
Doesn't it take too long, though? I mean, to get all that fiber out there. And so we should just be focused on doing something that we can roll out to as many people as widely as possible, as soon as possible.
Well, I'm sure Elon Musk would go for that argument, right? You can just put
That's a very good
satellite,
term, yes.
right?
Right.
Low Earth orbit satellite, be able to cover everybody. The problem with that is we did a study and provided a model to the FCC that showed that Starlink is going to, even if they meet every claim they make, they're going to 56% of those 640,000 locations for RDOF are not going to be able to deliver the broadband that Elon promised the FCC. And so you don't want to be relegated to being on the wrong side of the digital divide. And so what you don't want to do is take shortcuts. So now, absolutely, if I'm pulling fiber on one side of the lake and I can be able to beam fixed wireless across the other side of the lake and serve some people there while I'm deploying fiber to them, absolutely. So there are lots of technologies you can do to be able to give people service today while you're getting fiber to them. But what you don't want to do is say, here, I put up a wireless signal or satellite and stuff and say, okay, you're done. Chris, you got your broadband. Good luck. Because, as I mentioned earlier, we're shipping 10 gig symmetric today. We're going to be 25 gig here soon, and it's 50 gig. We saw that fiber can deliver 2.55 terabits. The game's not over, right? Here in 2021.
Right. So I do want to say that I think Starlink would say that they disagree with your findings on that. And so I thought you made totally reasonable arguments. I think Starlink's engineers feel like they can push beyond some of those things. And I just want to get that in there just so people have
they can if they don't have subscribers. So if they only serve 640,000 subscribers, but guess what? They're going to, every commercial, every military base, anywhere that they can be able to pick up a subscriber. And when you're on a shared medium, like a satellite, it's going to be dependent on how many subscribers you have. So if you're the first guy to get Starlink, you're going to have it great. But it's like, being on cable. When the school bus lets out and people get on the internet, all of a sudden your service is going to not be so good.
Yes, I think it's true. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because I want to make sure we have some time to mingle here. Is that upload is people are noticing it now. And I feel like one of my biggest frustration with whether it's people I like in the cable industry or people I like that are focused on wireless is I feel like they often just want to say, no, people really don't need upload and it's not important. And I think we're seeing that it is important to people.
Well, absolutely. We've seen the applications, just the pandemic has kind of driven the need for being able to do, everybody's doing Zoom and Teams and all kinds of collaborative applications. If you work from home and say, like in your business, if you want to upload videos or any kind of content, you need to be able to have that capacity. And to be able to claim that people don't need capacity, it's kind of like building one-way highways. Like, oh, you don't need to get back home. It's crazy, right? And so, those arguments are solely driven to make sure that any subsidies come. Either they want to secure their incumbent position and not have competition, or they want to dumb down the requirements so that legacy technologies can participate.
So I want to ask you about dynamics in the industry then, as we close out, and that is that off the top of my head, my sense is I think it's 40% of Americans have access to fiber to the home now. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's right. At the end of last year.
And that is majority driven by AT&T, Verizon. Verizon probably is far out in the lead with the most passings. You've got AT&T. Frontier had bought a lot of the Verizon stuff. And more recently, in last year, you're saying almost all the investment came from smaller providers and in terms of the increase.
Yeah, 88% of the fiber CapEx was from small providers. So, we're seeing there's about 900 rural electric co-ops. Over 100 already have broadband networks, and hundreds of others are now, with RDOF and other funding looking to deploy. We have municipalities, we have new emerging providers. So across the nation, those who have been left behind or have figured out they got to make things happen on their own or find providers. And what's really interesting is that these incumbent providers now have realized that there's an opportunity for them to provide public-private partnerships. And so, we see that, what the administration is trying to make sure that every American's served. And so if there's a model, I've never met a mayor that said, I want to be in the broadband business, but every single one of them says, I need economic development, I need jobs, I need to really, increase the standard of living for my citizens. And so, what these incumbent providers now saying is, if you guys want to put in the facilities and you need an experienced provider to help you with services, they're willing to do that, right? And they're very flexible in the model. So we're seeing all kinds of public-private partnerships now.
Yeah, and even from, obviously, a lot of small companies have historically been more willing to do that, but we are seeing this more. We're seeing it in New Hampshire from the incumbent telephone company Consolidated, which is the fifth or sixth largest in the nation, maybe seventh. They're a large telephone incumbent. Windstream seems more open to this. CenturyLink's doing it in Springfield. It seems like it's a whole new world out there.
It's certainly a big change from the past, where the incumbents were trying to lock everybody out and hold their position. Now they see that it makes good business sense to partner with communities that want to, and I think that's great for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like one of the things I'm happy about is that it's not just a partnership in the sense of you take the money and we'll take the network. Some of these partnerships are the municipality has considerable, control and future power and things like that. So there's a lot of models out there. Gary from Gary Bolton, Fiber Broadband Association. Thank you so much for your time today.
Chris, anytime. Always good to see you. And great event here down in Houston.
Yes, yeah, I'm very excited to be here face to face, and I'm glad a lot of people are masked up. We've got the best of both worlds to make sure we're safe and we still get together. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at muninetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. Follow muninetworks.org stories on Twitter. The handle's @MuniNetworks. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Arnie Hughesby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons. This was the Community Broadband Bits podcast. Thanks for listening.